How's everybody doing? All right, just in DEFCON style, we got this quick video to show you, so play good attention. Yeah, what do you think? Awesome. All right, so our first speakers up today are Charlie and Chris, adventurers in automotive networking and controlling. Let's give them a big DEFCON welcome. Come on! Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Stand over there and we'll pray.
All right.
Hey, thanks for coming out.
Yeah, thanks for getting up early or staying up late, however it is for you guys.
I was disappointed we didn't boo the general off the stage at Black Hat, but I'm even more disappointed there's this many people awake at 10 o'clock.
Shame on all of you. Go ahead. Let's go.
All right, let's go.
So, as you said before, I'm Chris. He's Charlie. I don't know. Some people may know me for Windows heap crap. I think people know Charlie for computers of some sort.
Yeah, I do computers.
Okay. He does computers, and so can you. So we're going to talk about the cars we hacked today, and we're going to talk about the ECUs in those cars, and then we're going to give you a brief kind of overview of CAN. Most people are familiar with it, but we'll give you our 2 cents. Charlie's going to go over some standards and protocols. Then we'll go into the cool shit, which is CAN message injection. This is how we're actually doing physical control of the car, stuff like that. And from there, we can talk about firmware reprogramming of these ECUs, and that's how you would get what referred to in the business as persistence to be on the car forever.
Yeah, so if you guys need any work on your cars, we're mechanics now. So like,
I'm a licensed mechanic?
Yeah. Like all you got to do is you get on the internet and you can like order this stuff, and then I think that
walk
means you're
right to the garage and then start working on them.
So
yeah, if you guys have a Toyota or a Ford that you want Charlie to fix, we'll just bring our laptops over and tune it right up for you.
Yeah, everyone says how hard it is to get a job, but man, you just order this stuff and it's like
job creators,
right
here.
Exactly.
All right.
So
I'll
talk. So let's talk about like what's been done before and why we decided to build on that. So in 2010, 2011, a couple papers came out by a group of researchers from University of Washington and University of California, San Diego, and they did like awesome work. Like I read their paper, it was incredible, and immediately I was like, how can I expand on this? And I was like, well, I can't. Right? They did everything. They looked at remote attacks. They looked at the attack surface, vulnerabilities. They wrote remote exploits. They controlled things through the CAN network. They did like the whole thing, and it's super impressive work. But the one thing that they didn't do was they didn't tell anyone about any of the details. So there's this video where you can see this like big black dot, and so it's like the guy walks in and he unlocks the car and drives off. And when I first saw it, I was like, oh shit, they just stole someone's car for real, and they don't want like the cops to bust them, and that's why they covered it up. But it turns out they covered it up because they didn't want anyone to know what car they worked on. And then if you look in their paper, you see things like this, where instead of giving you the actual data packets that they use to like control the car, they avoid giving all the bytes out to you. So
it's a great paper with no real data information in it, which kind of sucks.
Right. So they basically said, I can remotely attack your car, I can control aspects of your car, but you can't do that. Right. So that was like, that made us want to say we want everyone to be able to do this, right? I wanted to share what we know how to do. It took us like 10 months to do this.
Yeah.
So we don't want everyone to have to go through 10 months of pain like we went through. We want people to go through 2 months of pain. And
Hopefully, instead of spending the first 3 months just flopping around, not knowing what to do, you'll be able to take what we give you, get a tool, cut it open, and be reading and writing stuff on your car within a few hours.
Right. And the other thing is so if I wanted to like actually attack you in your car, which I don't want to do, like you would have to do two things. You'd have to have a remote attack, which the university guys already showed. They showed remote attacks through the Bluetooth interface of a car. And they also showed like a pretty cool one where you stick a CD into the radio and they can get code running that way. And then the second part is doing something to the car itself. And so our research was purely focused on the second part, because like we've written exploits our whole life, and exploits are kind of boring, but the cool thing is like making cars drive around. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to use new vehicles. They never said what vehicle they used, but everyone thinks it's a GM.
It was.
So some guy who's up here, who I have no idea who it is, and he would have no idea what the right answer was, says it's a Chevy Malibu. And he's right. So anyway, there was a car that they used. So we chose different cars. We also chose cars that had like more electronic features than the cars they used, such as like stuff that had to do with steering. So that was like something new. But the main thing that's different is that we want to share all the data and all the hard work we did so that everyone else can do the same thing, because car research is cool, so I want other people to do it.
Yeah, I'm sure more people than us want to do this stuff, so we'll try to help everyone out.
All right, so the first thing I learned, like we're software guys. Like we don't really know that much about hardware or cars or...
I know Windows. That's about it.
Yeah. I know, I was like, okay, a car is just like a big iPhone, right? I'll be good. This is going to be no problem. So it turns out it's not. So like in the old days when I wanted to do research, I would just like download some software and start looking at it. And that's super easy. But it turns out like starting car hacking, not so easy. So you had to buy a car. It turns out this is really hard, especially when you're like, okay, I want a 2010 Toyota Prius with intelligent park assist. And they're like, okay, what color?
Don't care.
Don't care. That's like, what about like if it's like kind of scratched up? Fuck, I don't care, right?
Mileage. Don't care.
Right. Mileage, don't care. Right. I don't care what color. I don't care like where it's at. Anywhere in the country, just I need to find this car and I want to buy it from you. And this is actually
they would say, what do you want to spend? And we said, just give me the car.
Right.
Just give me a car.
We will give you however much you tell us. Just get us a car.
I assure our backers have enough money to afford this car. Just give us it.
Absolutely. Yep. We're like Iron Man. We have our own corporation and we're just independently wealthy. We'll pay whatever. So anyway, we got the cars, and the first thing that comes up when they pull up, it's like, can it park itself? And then they're like, yes, I'll buy it.
Yep.
So anyway, so getting the cars was hard, and then like we're used to working like this,
usual work day right there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, this is called working from home. But it turns out in car research, you have to like be out in your car, and it's like 20 degrees out, and you can't turn the car on because you've fucked up the ECUs and stuff. And so I'm sitting out there at 20 degrees with all the clothes I own on.
Looking like the Unabomber, by the way.
I know, yeah. Yeah, so a little bit. And my computer's about to freeze up. But anyway, so it's much harder to do car research. So this is like normally when you're ready to start like attaching your debugger. Like
that's how you work when you come to Vegas. You just do a little bit of work,
just
attach,
like chilling, right? This is like regular software research. It's easy. Hardware research, it sucks. Like you're like constantly cutting up your hands and stuff. It's a total pain. And then when it comes time to finally do disassembling, like some people think Auto Pro's hard. Not us.
No, it's always...
I can handle Auto Pro all day. Yeah. But then it's like disassemble a car. Yeah. This is hard.
The steps for that, by the way, from Toyota's website were in 388 easy steps, you can have the dash off. I was like, fuck this, give me a crowbar.
Yeah. So the good thing is, we disassemble cars, but we don't reassemble cars.
Oh, no, yeah. The Humpty Dumpty will never be put back together.
No. So then when it comes time to debug, it's like I'm used to just busting out GDB or Ali debug. Like, I get that stuff. But debugging cars, it's like, the car won't start. Okay, well, I just cut 17 wires, and one of them is a problem.
Yeah. I should have stopped at 16.
Yes, and I don't remember which ones they were. And then when you're writing your exploit or you're writing, your code, your payload, there's a bug, no big whoop. Bug when you're writing your payload for your car.
The car requires a tow truck.
Yeah, you call the flatbed, and they come and they pick up your car, and they take it to the dealer, and then you explain to the dealer why your dash is tore out, and why your computers are hanging from wires in your car.
I said, seriously, don't worry about the inside of the car. You're going to get this car, and you're going to freak out. Don't freak out. Just call me, and I'll tell you what to do.
Yeah. And then when they couldn't fix the car, because imagine that they had never seen this problem before.
Seriously, they had to get like corporate Toyota on the line.
Yeah,
It's like, we've never seen this. I was like, I'm sure of that.
Yeah. And then, so then they call Chris and they're like, yeah, Toyota says that we should put everything back together. And Chris is like, no, don't do that. Just make it run.
Yeah, I was like, I have 500 parts in my garage. You're not getting them. Just fix it.
All right, and then finally, like when your application finally crashes, when you're fuzzing or something, like that's a good thing. People are happy, and at worst, your application stops. When you crash in your car research, it's like a totally different story. So the short story of this is I have this feature that I'll show you guys later how you can make the brakes not work in your car. And when you're like, I was pulling in my driveway with this feature engaged, and I was like, oh no, it's too late. And there was my real car on this side of the driveway, and there was my house on this side of the driveway, and all I had was a tunnel into my garage and no brakes. So I was like, I tried whatever I could. I panicked. I just rammed into the back of my garage.
Charlie called me. He's like, I wrecked. I was like, that's awesome. We did it.
I know. Yeah, Chris was not a supportive.
No, I didn't care about his
there.
well-being. I was just happy we did something.
Yeah. So anyway, I crashed the wall, and then here's some more photos. My lawnmower
Poor lawnmower.
got totally destroyed. You can see the back of my garage. It's no longer flat anymore. The wood is all splintered, and then here's the picture.
Poor lawnmower.
The first ever cyber victim in the physical world.
Yeah. When it goes on Wikipedia, you can say that we were the first people to cause harm to an object through automobile research.
Yep. That poor thing. Okay, so let's talk about the cars we actually got. So this is like breaking research since no one ever really talks about this. But so we decided to get the hardest possible cars to hack, it seems. But really what we did was we just said, we ordered up, what's the cheapest car that has auto park? And we found two. So 2010 Ford Escape. It has such advanced features such as cruise control, backup camera. But what we cared about is parking assist.
Yeah.
So here is a video of real park assist in action. This is not hacking. This is like a feature from the car. So you're driving along. It like tells you, it's like put it in reverse. You put it in reverse, and you back up, and then it steers for you. So it doesn't make the car move. It doesn't change the gear, but it will steer for you. So it's like.
You'll see the wheel move.
There should be some sound. Is there sound? Anyone? Sound? Can you make the sound
You're supposed
work?
to look boss, too, while holding your GoPro.
So we had to try and
park.
figure out what type of codec we were dealing with, which we did by downloading every single RFC and grepping through them en masse for codecs whose frame sizes matched what we...
Holy shit. I don't remember grepping or saying that.
Likewise.
Yeah, so anyway. So maybe sound from the video and not the next room would be awesome. But anyway, so this thing, it was like, this is really cool. The car parks itself. That means there's a computer in the car that can make the steering wheel move, and that's of interest.
It does stuff. Yeah.
All right.
I had a 2010 Toyota Prius, and this was like your super luxury end Toyota Prius. It had radar cruise control, so if you're going down the highway and a car in front of you was going slower, it would slow down for you, which meant, right, the brakes are going to slow you down, we thought. It has lane keep assist, which was cool, where you can set it if you're going off the road. It sees the lines and will kind of correct the car for you.
This is for real the car from the future.
This is the car from the future.
When Chris was driving to South Bend for our testing, he says, I just kicked back and was on Twitter.
I was just tweeting the whole time, driving my foot.
It just steers you, and like if you're going to wreck it,
yeah, it's like if you're going to wreck, it stops you. If you're going to wreck, it beeps. It's like if it starts beeping, I know I have to get off Twitter for a second.
Yeah.
It had a pre-collision system, which again was really neat. Even if you had your foot on the acceleration pedal, it would do things like pre-tighten the seatbelt and apply the brakes if it thought you were going to wreck. Oh, and we're awesome.
Cool. Thanks, man.
And again, it also had intelligent park assist, which what we really wanted, right? I think one of our main goals for this was have the car steer itself without anything, that is doing it with a computer. We didn't even know if it would be possible. So we wanted to make sure there was a computer doing steering for us.
All right.
So ECUs, or electronic control units. These control almost every aspect of your modern automobile, and that's especially true for the Prius. Like almost all of the Prius was controlled by computers, right? And these computers take input from sensors. Sensors tell you things like how fast you're going. And then they control actuators. Actuators are things that, say, clamp the brakes or put fuel into the engine, things like that. They're located kind of everywhere within the car. Like in the Prius, most of them were in the dash. Like the ABS one's actually built into the main brake cylinder, so it's like you can't just yank it out. You have to like take the whole car apart. So they're everywhere. And I think one of the questions that we always got was like, oh yeah, it's Unix or it's some kind of Linux on all these things. Like, it's not. It's just custom code on arbitrary hardware, and there's no like general thing that you can do. They're not running services. It's a computer that does stuff.
Right, and it's you might know that, hey, there's a computer in my car because there's a screen. Well, there is that computer, but the thing is, there's like 30 other computers that you maybe don't know.
And they're all interacting, and it's really hard to kind of figure it out. The ECUs on our cars were connected via a CAN bus, and basically all these computers are on the same bus. It's broadcast in nature, so every ECU that is on the same bus can hear and see every other ECU. So this is good because you can see all the traffic. It's bad because there's no real addressing, so you don't know where things are going or where they came from without physically like isolating one of these things. So one of the hardest things is we'd see all this cool traffic and then be like, I don't know where this came from, right? So while it's good and bad, it's good if you want to, say, inject into this network because they don't ask where messages came from either. And as long as you're on there, you can send messages. And I think this is important to understand because I think a lot of the first feedback we got when we were doing this were like, oh, they're jacked into the car. They didn't do it remotely. It was like, it doesn't matter if you're jacked in or if you do it remotely. Once you're on the CAN bus, you're on the CAN bus. You can forge messages, do whatever. So if you pop a remote exploit, good. If you have a limited physical access, good. It's really all the same thing. If you compromise an ECU or you're connected in physically, you're all good. And I'm sure there's not like black bag teams that could just like clip 2 wires to a car and have a thing. But what do I know?
Yeah. So the ECUs they basically talk on this network and send messages to each other, and different cars have different sort of topology. So like the Ford had 2 actual different networks that were sort of isolated, but some of the ECUs were on both networks, and I think the Toyota basically had 1.
Yeah, it had 1, but then like another segregated 1, but they all worked on the same speed and everything.
All right, so then if you want to see what like an ECU actually looks like, this is from the Ford, the powertrain control module. So this is the one that controls like your engine. And the thing to like see here is there must be like 300 wires that run into this. And each of these wires like run to like, an oxygen sensor and a piston or I don't know, some car thing.
Lingo stuff.
Right. So anyway, they're all important though. If you start cutting them, the car doesn't work anymore. But the point is, this is just a computer with like lots of wires that run into it. And if you rip it open, it looks like this. So you've got like basically 1 chip, and then that's like the the CPU, and then like lots of other little chips that are like memory and stuff. So that's the inside of what an ECU looks like.
So the CAN network. We were interested in CAN specifically. We're aware that there's Lin and FlexRay and several other things, but we want to look at CAN. We knew both of our cars would have CAN, so we figured it out. The IDs can really be 11 bits or 29 bits in length, and the IDs are what the ECUs use since it's broadcast to say which message is for me. And
Identifiers.
What's that?
Identifiers.
Yeah, they're identifiers. And then the data can be 0 to 8 bytes in length. We'll talk more a little bit later how you can actually send more than that, but generally you're going to see 0 bytes and up to 8 bytes. And the CAN identifiers are actually used as a priority field, right? So to figure out arbitration on the bus, the lower IDs have precedent over higher ones. The highest priority ID on a CAN bus for 11-bit is zeros, right? So again, broadcast in nature, they have these IDs. You can kind of look these IDs up, categorize them. We spent a lot of time just figuring out what certain IDs were by spending hours and hours and hours and months in the car.
Right. So yeah, instead of sitting in front of your computer, I would drive up and down my street all night and parallel park my car like 200 times.
People had to think I was like a prowler in the neighborhood because I would just circle the block for like 4 days straight.
Yeah.
Like with a laptop in my hand, cables over my shoulder. And the lovely Pittsburgh police actually stopped me once and just saw me with cables and shit everywhere. Like, bro, I got to ask, what the hell are you doing? I was like, oh, I'm hacking cars. So they're like, that's cool. I was like, have a good day. And he actually told me, I tell you to drive safe. I was like, yeah, I know. So these are kind of the normal style CAN messages. You'll see that the format that we use was made up by Charlie and I to be human readable, and it also digestible by our API, which we'll talk about. IDH and IDL are just a byte apiece. Combine them, it's a 16-bit, it's 11 bits, but ID. And you see there's one from the Ford Escape. It has 8 bytes. There's one from the Toyota. It has 4 bytes. The Toyota really liked putting a checksum as the last byte. So if you look at the Prius traffic there, the last one's 95. That's IDH plus IDL plus length plus data, which is 33, A8, 0, and then it's a one byte checksum. This happens a lot. If you don't set that checksum right, messages are ignored by the ECU. So when we're injecting traffic, we had to make sure to always fix the checksums for each message we sent. The other is diagnostic examples. You'll see here how it's IDH 07 and IDL 60. That's an address. Each ECU is going to have this diagnostic address. And this is, although the CAN bus is broadcast in nature, you can actually identify individual ECUs by this address. The reply back from the ECU is always going to be 8 greater than what the ID was before it, right? So it's 0768. If you actually saw in the academics papers, they didn't cut off the front half of a lot of their messages that they were using, and not so shockingly, they all started with 0007. So
yeah.
there were a lot of stuff that they ended up we derived that were diagnostic messages.
Right.
For them.
So there's normal messages, which was on the last slide, and that's basically what your car normally uses. The computers talking to each other. And diagnostic messages are you usually would never see in your car unless you're like in the shop.
Yeah. Mechanics use these to figure out what's wrong with your car, right? Check engine lights on. You send these things back and forth and figure it out.
So these are used to to talk to one particular ECU and ask it how it's doing or try to make it do things or whatever.
Yeah.
All right, so different cars will follow different standards. Our 2 cars followed the standards sometimes when they felt like it, I guess.
Toyota like breaking the standards. They just did all their own thing, however they want to do.
Yeah. So the first standard you need to read if you want to figure out what this traffic means is ISO 157652, which is better known as ISO TP. So this is basically a way you're like, yeah, so you can only send 8 bytes in a message. Like, that's kind of weak. And then, like, especially if you want one for a checksum, so it's going to be hard to communicate in only 7 bytes. So ISO-TP is a way to send more than 8 bytes at a time over those 8-byte messages. And the way it works is basically your very first byte is like metadata for the rest of the data. And depending on if it's a 0, 1, 2, or 3 in the first nibble, like the first 4 bits, tells you whether it's just going to be one frame, whether it's the first of many, whether it's other ones, whether it's a response, and so forth. So here's what that looks like in ISO-TP data. So on the top one there, it's a 03, which means it's a single message, and the data is 3 bytes in length. So the actual data is 14FF00. And then the next one, it's you send a 1, which means there's going to be more than 8 bytes data altogether. And then the length is going to be 082, so 82 hexbytes. And then the data starts. And then you get a response back of 30 saying, okay, I know you're talking ISO-TP, I'm ready for that. And then the next one is 2, which means this is a follow-up packet. And 1 means it's the first follow-up packet. So then it's data, and then 2, second follow-up, 2, 3.
And we explain this in much more detail in the paper if you want.
Yeah. So the paper we're going to release is like 100 pages. It's just like full of information. So if there's ever anything you want to know
If you ever
more
wanted
about,
to be inside Charlie's brain, you can read this paper, and it's just like that.
and it's going to be just as boring. So anyway, that's the way that like you're going to see data actually on the network if it's ISO-TP. So ISO-TP just says how to send lots of data, but it doesn't say what the data looks like. So there's another standard, ISO 14229 or 30, so that describes what that data is supposed to look like, at least in some respects. So the thing is, each ECU may or may not implement the things in that standard, and when they do, even that, it's just like sort of the first layer, and then there would be actually more data that you would have to understand. And so the standards sort of help you like learn the first like 3 bytes out of 20 bytes, but after that you're kind of on your own.
And also with it being that every ECU doesn't have these, when we originally did this, we looked up the spec and it's like, oh, each ECU is going to have read memory by address. We'll just rip the firmware right off.
Yep.
No.
It's totally disappointing.
None of mine had any of that functionality. So you get all excited when you read these standards. You're like, this is going to be simple.
Yeah.
All the cars are going to follow this. I get the firmware. I'll just write it on. I'll make it do whatever. Car will blow up. I'll be internet famous, it'll be great. And it's 10 months of just crying, just in your car crying, wonder why your neighbors think you're weird.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So here's an example of some of that ISO in action. So here you're trying to establish a diagnostic session with one of the ECUs. So here, like the O2 is the ISO-TP part. It says there's going to be 2 bytes of data. And then you got 10.03. The 10 says diagnostic session control, and the 3 says extended diagnostic session. And then the ECU replies back. It always says if it's successful, it adds 40 to the number that is I forget they're called ID or I can remember.
Service number?
Oh yeah, it might be service number. So anyway, so 50, and then it repeats the 3, and then it sends some more data. So this is what it looks like back and forth communications with these diagnostic packets. Anything else I want to say? No. Okay. So then here's one that's actually pretty interesting. So in order to talk to the ECUs and make them do things, you need to authenticate to them. And to do that, you use this thing called security access. And so security access rolls like this. So again, 2 bytes of data, and then 2701. 27 means security access. 01 says I want the first level of access. There's like multiple levels you can get to. And then the response back from the ECU is these 3 bytes that are highlighted. And this is a seed. And the idea is this is just some random number, and then you have a secret key. And you can do some crypto algorithm with their seed and your key, and end result of that is 3 more bytes that
crypto algorithm.
Yeah, yes, crypto, in quotes. So then you send them back the 3 bytes that you've generated, and that proves that you have the key, so they know to trust you. So here I send back the 3 bytes that it expects, and then it says 67, which is 40 plus 27, which says yes, you are now authenticated at level 2, which is like the lowest secure level you can be at. So anyway, that's the part that makes it, if you wanted to do cool things, like we sat around for a long time trying to figure out how to get it to do security.
Yeah, we sat for quite a bit doing that.
But luckily, you won't have to. Exactly. Okay, so here's some more things that you can do to ECUs with diagnostic sessions. Input-output control is one that's kind of cool. It's like you can tell it that suppose that your sensors are reading one thing, like pretend your sensors are reading one thing, or you can ask it like, what are your sensors telling you, and stuff like that. So you can see it here, it's 0307, which means that is the control to be tested. That's supposed to correspond to some sensor, and you don't know what that is. Like it's not part of the standard. It's just proprietary. So
each manufacturer, each model can be different for this stuff.
Right, and then there's even more data too. So if you don't know all that, the ECU is gonna be like, I don't know what you're talking about. So that's why it's hard.
This is one of the services that's basically do stuff.
Right. And then here's some, so PIDs was the thing. That was the 10 and the 27 stuff. Yeah. Anyway, so here's some of the other ones that sound really cool. Routine control is pretty cool. It's like
RPC?
Yeah, it's like RPC for, on Windows or something, except it's on an ECU. And then there's other ones like request download, request upload, I'll talk about later, to update the firmware. Yeah. And then, like Chris said, there's these ones that are like, read memory by address. Like, sweet, just dump the firmware. But that never works.
Yeah, that, it does on some, but certainly not ours. But
no. Yeah, you would Google read memory by address, and there would be all these guys who are tuners trying to rev up their car. Yeah. Like, oh yeah, it totally works. Blah blah blah. Yeah. I wish I had that car.
Everyone's like, oh dude, the tuner community just. I was like, well, guess what? We're not trying to do that. We're trying to just get the firmware off because we just want to reverse it. And no one's tuning a Toyota Prius. Yeah. So it's not like I had an option for this, and I don't think anyone's on the Ford Escape on track day. So.
No one cares to tune their Ford Escape.
So we had some hardware tools as well, and our main thing that we used was an ecom cable. You can buy these things for like $200. Unfortunately, they don't have direct ODB2 access, so we kind of had to find the wiring schematic on their website, cut some wires, and put it into an ODB2 shell. So basically, we turned this thing into our own personal ODB2 reader and writer, which was great because Ecom provided an API, and we augmented it and wrote all our stuff that we're going to release, where it makes it very, very easy to read, filter, write, store externally, bring it in from external files, and all that kind of stuff.
And we were very proud that we could cut those wires and attach.
When I cut those wires and like hooked it up to the ODB2 thing and it worked one day, I was like, hardware hacker.
Absolutely. I actually was so bad, I had him mail me one once.
Yeah, we met in South Bend for a football game, and I brought him one out in a box. I was all happy about it. I used a Cardac Plus as well. It's a J2534 pass-through device. These are what mechanics use. It's kind of a medium between the manufacturer's software and the ODB2 port. This was really cool because when some bad things happen in my car, I could like clear the DTC codes. I could perform some level of maintenance, things like that. It was really good because I had the Toyota tool, had it hooked up, and you can buy a Y-splitter for your ODB2 port. And I ran this tool, but had our EcomCat software that we wrote sniffing. So it's awesome. Like I'd make the tool do stuff, and then sniff it, and then analyze the packets, and say, oh, okay, this does this, and we'll talk about that more later. Those are just the ODB2 shells with you get a bunch of little pins in them. They're like 50 cents. If you're going to do this, buy like 20 of them. They end up breaking from time to time, so just get a bunch of them. This brings us to the software that we had. The first thing, the tool that we wrote is a thing called EcomCat. You can probably guess why we named it that.
Because we like cats?
Because I'm allergic to cats. Obviously, they all know that. It was our Swiss Army knife. This is a thing that we kind of started writing. I was writing some of it on a plane, so when you read the code, our string parser for this is actually a state machine, because I was like, I didn't have internet, and I couldn't look up any of the documents. So I was like, I know how to write a state machine. I'll just do it that way. But this can read and write to the CAN bus. It can store output from the CAN bus into a file. It can read from that file and write it onto the CAN bus. It can do levels of filtering for IDs. So say you figure out an ID for steering, and you want to isolate it and only see messages from it on your screen because you want to see what happens when you turn the wheel, which is a lot of what we did, right? You're looking for reactions in the data bytes for things you're physically doing in the car. This does it all, and it's probably a bit of a mess, but you should be able to kind of look through it and figure it out.
And we're going to release this like this weekend or something, and paper and everything.
Then we have our EcomCat API. And EcomCat's written in C, and the EcomCat API is also written in C. Again, this is API functions for abstracting a lot of EcomCat. So instead of having to change. We have defines at the top for the ID that you want to look for.
EcomCat API is actually in Python.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry.
Obviously, he really worked hard on that aspect of the project.
I've been asleep at the wheel for far too long. But the EcomCat API, is the Python portion of what we did for EcomCat, and there's another thing called carlib that is the thing written in C that the EcomCat API uses. There we go. And so it's just an easy way to do car stuff without having to write C or compile, and it makes it really easy. And then we also did PyEcom, which again is just more Python stuff. And the neat stuff about this is you don't have to worry about ISO-TP or things like that. You can just say, send data bytes, and if it's going to send you 2,000 hex bytes back, it takes care of it for you, you get it back, and you can do whatever you want with it.
We got to start moving.
Okay. Here's some example code. Open a device. And then you can say, hey, here's one of those debug lines we know. Send it. Done. So instead of having to do all this in C and do 8 months of research, you can buy an ecom cable, copy and paste this, and your car happy.
Right. So the idea is you can read or write CAN traffic with 2 lines of Python now. That's it.
Yeah. So, not all the functions in the automobiles are performed by CAN. So, example, in Charlie's car, the acceleration pedal was kind of directly wired into the engine ECU. So, not everything's going to happen.
Right. So, since it's directly wired, there's no way that it's ever going to listen to anything on the CAN bus that tells it to do anything related to the throttle, because it just knows that doesn't happen on CAN.
Yeah. And also, when you're doing this stuff, you have to realize there's going to be contention between what the actual ECU is sending and what you're trying to forge as well. So, you're not going to have completely proper reactions all the time for certain things. And then there's going to be actually safety features involved. We'll talk more about steering with the park assist, right? We couldn't go over a certain speed.
Okay, so let's get to some of the things that we can inject. So these are like, we'll start with some of the real easy stuff. So there's one packet, CAN IDs 201, that you can set the speedometer and the tachometer on the Ford. And so this is the code, the Python code that would do that.
Yeah, if you had a Ford Escape, you could literally copy and paste that.
Right. Oops, I did the wrong thing. So here's like a video that just shows this is like, I'm on a closed test track here that I rented out.
You can tell we were really careful.
So yeah, I'm not really driving 60 miles an hour, but it sure looks like it. Okay, and then you can do the same. The same thing works for Toyota. It's like 2 lines.
We're obviously.
Let's see, Chris.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. We're not moving.
Believe it.
I want to show people that I'm not somehow.
It's like
not
a magic
moving in front of my
trick.
garage. And then you can just tell it.
Really, the garage is moving on a flatbed truck, and it's all trick.
Exactly.
We don't really know what the hell
We
we're
hired
doing.
Michael Bay to figure this out for us.
So anyway, so you can change the speedometer.
In the Toyota, you could do braking. Remember before I talked about how the pre-collision system could brake for you. So we isolated the messages that were being sent, and usually they would come across saying like, hey, don't brake. But finally, I took some garbage cans out and backed the car up about 200 meters and floored it, and then went right to the garbage cans and hit them, and it would beep, and the brakes pumped when it happened. So we
Not
isolated
enough
that
to stop from nailing the garbage.
No, not enough to stop actually from destroying the garbage cans, but enough that we found out what the messages were. So,
Right, which is really what we cared about.
yeah.
So.
Here's the code for that. You can copy and paste that guy, and we just decided, hey, we want the brakes at full force. So here's a video of us.
Again, we're on a closed test track.
Closed test track. And right
So
now, you'll see when the car
We're
stops.
driving about, what, 50 or something?
Yeah, we're about 50, and you can
And
immediately.
then right now we do it, and
Yeah.
then we're like,
And you can even press on the acceleration pedal. As long as you're still sending this message, you can press on the acceleration pedal and you can't move. This completely immobilizes the car.
all right.
Steering in Toyota was a bit tricky, but eventually, like Charlie said, we were the people outside parallel parking our cars for 2 months straight, looking like crazy people and trying to get these messages. We figured these out. The only thing with the Toyota, it refused to do it unless you were in reverse. So then we had to figure out how do we trick the car to think it's in reverse. So we did that. And then
It would only work if you're going slow.
yeah, it only works if you're going slow. So like if you saw the Nintendo controller demo, we did that before we figured out how to trick it. And we gave it, we're like, well, now we need to make it figure out how it thinks it's going slow. So if you go to the next slide, we just have some code and some files that we're going to put up. And it's like, hey, we're going slow. Hey, we're in reverse. Hey, jerk that wheel, man. And this is a really good video of Charlie and I almost dying on our closed test track.
Yes. So I'm driving along minding my own business, and Chris
and I'm
tells
next
the
to
steering wheel
Charlie.
to jerk to the right.
Again, I can't even hold the GoPro anymore. I think here's where we almost die, right here.
I make the mistake of trying to adjust I tried to adjust my seatbelt, and right when it was going to happen,
Yeah.
almost killed me. So here's
So-
the you know, if you were driving, what it looks like.
That's going to be not good times in traffic.
Yeah.
All right. So we have acceleration. Acceleration was a bit weird because Charlie mentioned before that there was 2 CAN buses. They both ran at the same rate, but this one was kind of segregated. So although we had to just clip into this individual CAN bus and couldn't do it over ODB2, if you're going to compromise the ECU, this ECU is on this bus, and this is the one you would want to pop. Basically, I found out that, hey, here is what happens when you send these messages, and it kind of simulates pressing the acceleration pedal. Unfortunately for the Toyota, it's hybrid synergy drive, so yeah, you can play it.
So we're going to tell it that the accelerator is all the way floored.
Yeah.
And so what you'll see in the video is Chris will be driving, and he'll pick his legs up, and if you look super close, you can see actually the speedometer start to go up. You
Yeah,
can listen
so-
to the engine too if the sound is good.
Yeah,
Let's see.
if there's sound. Yeah, try to listen to the engine, I guess.
So his legs are not on the accelerator right now.
You can see I'm a bit scared.
And then we notice this, we stop, but you can hear the engine is still at full rev.
Yeah. You can hear the RPMs are way up, right?
And then he can't turn off the car.
And you can't turn off the car.
And this is the last time that car has ever started.
No, seriously, if we would have filmed this 2 seconds longer, you heard a pop, and I was like, that never happened before. And it just died. We actually blew up the inverter, and it's going to cost us $5,000 to like get it out of the shop. And they're like, we've never seen this happen. And I was like, yep.
Luckily, yeah. Luckily, Stark Enterprises is going to foot the bill.
Yeah,
right?
Stark Enterprises has our back, so we're all good.
So anyway, that was all stuff we did by injecting normal CAN traffic. So that's the traffic you would normally see. Now we're going to look at if we start to do diagnostic things. Again, we had to first figure out how to get around the security access. And basically the way we did that was, well, for the one, this is like really funny. One of the ECUs actually didn't send a random thing. It just sent the same thing every time. So you could just watch it once and replay it. And in the paper, you can see the explanation of why that happens. But the other ECUs really do send random things. So you can't like brute force it. You can't like replay things. So what we did was we bought all the tools the mechanics use, and then we reversed them.
Along with the shirts.
Yes. So, you know, felt good. So anyway, this is the IDS tool you can get from Ford. Only qualified mechanics
can use this.
So then you can start to like reverse it. And we're good at software, so this was like the easiest
This was
part.
the easiest part for us. It was great.
So this is you can look at this DLL. This is the algorithm that it uses to take the seed and the key and compute the response. And then you can actually find where they store all the keys for all the cars in the DLL.
And for $200 easy, you too can have all the keys.
Yep. And that's all in our Python script. So, and then the keys, it turns out, are 5-byte values, but sometimes they would make them ASCII bytes. And so they were like fun. It's always fun to see people's passwords.
Yeah, those are all Ford keys, by the way.
Yeah, these are all from Ford keys. And that's, in Hackers, the movie, they said God is the most used password. And they didn't use God, but they did use Jesus.
God bless.
Yep. Now, so here's the keys for the 2010 Ford Escape.
Yeah, it's all on an API. You don't even have to worry about these. We can just do it all for you.
And then...
yeah, Toyota's much the same. They actually just use 2 bytes and XORed them with 2 static values. There.
Yeah, so theirs was pretty lame.
XOR 2 values. I think we can all do that.
Yeah. But we do it for you in Python.
Exactly.
So then you can start to send these diagnostic ones. So here is killing the engine. I'm driving up a hill, and then I kill the engine here, and then you can see like we stop, and then I'm trying to start the car, but it won't start, and so I'm rolling downhill.
Did you kill the engine?
And my son is actually filming it, and he's talking to me. Anyway, so you can kill the engine anytime you want, and it won't ever start again until you turn that off.
You can turn the lights on and off in the Toyota if they're in the auto state. So you can say, hey, turn them on, turn them off. Car blew up. We didn't get a chance to film it. Check the paper. We'll have a Python script. You can look at how to turn the lights on.
We were going to film this right after the acceleration video, but instead...
One more video, and then we blew the car.
We don't have a video for that. All right. And the Ford, you can you can take out the ECU that is in control of all the lights in the car. And so here is an example of that.
The smart junction
Me
box.
talking.
So here's my lights.
I'll turn that down so you can't hear me. So anyway, so the lights go out, and it's like the air conditioning goes out, the radio goes out, the brake lights go out, the headlights go out. So if you can imagine driving down a dark street, you would be in
not fun.
Super stealth mode, engaged. You can see me like, I can't get out of park either because the electronics to control the thing that stops you from jamming it into gear wouldn't let me out of park either.
We can do the horn in Toyota, so you can just blast the horn and forever until it malfunctions. So here's us messing with Andy Greenberg.
Oh my God. Oops.
What happens if I can't do anything about this?
So yes, you cannot do anything about it.
Cannot do anything
Even if
about
you turn off the car, the horn still plays.
Yeah, if you turn off the car, the horn still is going. We talked about the pre-collision system before. Toyota, we can actually yank the seatbelts. So if the driver's driving, you see here, it's me versus Charlie via seatbelt.
But I'm going to fight it.
He's fight it, Charlie. And
I'm like, stop it.
Yeah, well, it's not that great. It's like really annoying. By the way, I kept on telling you, I was like, that's the last one. I'm done, I swear. You can unlock and lock all the doors in the Toyota Prius via the CAN bus. Again, we meant to do that video. Car blew up. We don't have it. Check the paper. I have a script, 5-line Python script. Unlock and lock all the doors. And that would be great if you had a remote, right, and wanted interior access.
Right. Fuel gauge.
Fuel gauge. Yep, we can tell the Toyota it has as much or as little gas as we please. If you see in this video, we actually have a quarter tank of petrol, and now we have a full tank. I think this would be actually a good joke on your friends, to tell me always has a full tank of gas.
So here's one for the Ford that I made Chris wet himself on. So he knew that I was going to make the brakes not work, but he didn't know that it comes with this super loud, scary sound at the same time.
I have a lot of cackles, but you'll see in this video, this is my I'm deathly afraid cackle. We're not stopping.
So this only happens if you're going like 5 or 10 miles an hour.
But imagine that the orphanage let out that day.
Yeah. So he's going to come park over here. That's the noise. And now we're over the curb. Now we're driving into the weeds. Now he's
I even
jamming
tried to
on-
use my left foot. I didn't know what to do. Right foot didn't work, so I tried my left foot on the brake.
Yeah. It turns out the brakes are disabled for either foot.
Yeah.
So we're like pretty much out of time, but you can actually dump the firmware. Just check out the paper for details, and you can reverse the whole thing, disassemble it. So here's just a video that shows I will rewrite the firmware of an ECU so that it continues to send out a packet even though I'm not connected anymore. So port for a second. I run my program. And then I can pull out. So now I've overwritten the ECU firmware, so now I'm not connected anymore to the OBD2 port. So now what's happened is the reverse camera is still on, even though I'm going forward, again on the closed test track. And so even though I'm driving, I'm not connected to the OBD2 port, the packets are still being sent by the ECU that I was able to rewrite the firmware for.
And in the malware game, I believe this is called persistence.
This is called advanced persistence.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, so that's a big deal because that's the difference between just spoofing CAN messages and then completely taking control of a computer that exists in that car and making it do stuff. So those are the things that are like the scary stuff. Yeah, Toyota reflashing is astronomically weird. Check out the paper. I think I wrote like 14 pages on how you reverse their file format and all that other stuff.
All right, so then if you want to know, like, well, now what? So the good thing is now that we release the data, you can actually think about how you could stop these attacks. So a couple things really stick out. One is that you should never, so the normal packets are very regularly scheduled, so you can always, and we flood the network.
Yeah.
So if you see floods going on, then something's going on. This is like a histogram of what you would expect. But really, when we would attack, it would not look anything like this. And then also, you probably shouldn't see diagnostic packets while you're like driving around on the highway.
Yeah, disabling the brakes via diagnostics probably shouldn't happen when you're driving.
Yeah,
I think.
that's just us, but we're not,
Hey,
we're not car experts or anything.
Yeah.
And then we gave our white paper to Ford and Toyota, like a few weeks back. And Toyota issued this statement that says that they don't consider this hacking.
We're not hackers and we didn't hack the car, so no big deal.
Yeah, no whoop. And it says that we can do this, and it says our focus is to stop the remote part, and they don't care about this local stuff. Yeah. And they have like these super expensive R&D facilities just like us.
Yeah. They have test tracks as we.
Yeah. And so sort of the takeaway is that they really focus on remote attacks. So. In other
that's
words,
the same thing. You have a firewall and you have AV. Don't worry about it. Nothing's going to get in.
Yeah. So that's basically the way their cars are run, which is cool. So anyway.
CAN stuff.
Yep. So check out the paper. It's got everything you want to know about ECUs. And
if you're really interested, check out the paper. It's 101 pages, all the code, all our data, everything. Like you're gonna get everything, every brain dump that we've ever had. So we hope it helps everyone get in the game.
Yep. Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah. Thanks. Good job, buddy.